There is a technology quietly clipped to the chest of every police officer, firefighter, and first responder going to work right now, and most people never think about what it sees. Not the dramatic headline moments, not the carefully selected clips that make the news cycle. The real thing, the unfiltered, unstaged, unscripted thing that happens when a first responder turns a corner, opens a door, or runs towards something that every other human being is running away from. A body cam does not editorialize. It does not decide what is important and what isn't. It does not choose what to record based on how the story is going to look later. It records everything. The casual conversation right before everything changes, the moment of hesitation before the door, the sound of a man being pulled from fire, the face of a woman who has not been outside in 20 years, the voice of an officer who just saved a life and cannot quite hold it together. What you see on a body cam is not a story someone decided to tell. It is something that happened. And some of those things are so far outside the range of what most people ever witness in a lifetime that the footage itself becomes a document of a kind of human reality that words alone cannot fully convey. In this episode, we are going to walk through 4 of those moments. 4 cases where the body cam was rolling when something extraordinary, something almost impossible to believe, unfolded in real time. A man who built a fire with hand sanitizer and printer paper inside his own locked bedroom because it was the only way he could think of to make the outside world come inside after 20 years of nobody coming. A teenager who climbed out a window in the dark of a California night with a deactivated cell phone and no idea whether what she was about to do would save her family or get her killed. 2 officers who stood on a bridge for 40 minutes talking to a stranger on a ledge and then had to hold each other up when it was finally over. And a deputy in Florida who ran toward a burning car with a woman inside it whose hair was already on fire, and made it with seconds to spare. Every single moment of these cases was captured, on camera, in real time. This is what the camera saw. Story 1. The fire he set himself. It was a cold evening in February 2025 when a 911 call came in from a home on Blake Street in Waterbury, Connecticut. The caller was a 56-year-old woman named Kimberly Sullivan. Her voice on the recording was urgent. She said there was a fire at her house. She said her stepson was still inside. He's kind of passed out, she told the operator. He's out of it. When the first responders arrived, they found Sullivan standing outside in the street, pajama pants and boots, clutching a small dog. She was directing officers' attention toward the smoke coming from the upstairs window of her home. The body cam footage of those first minutes shows a routine chaos of a house fire, multiple responders, voices overlapping, the visual sweep of lights across a residential street. What it also shows is something small but significant. Sullivan, outside and safe with her dog, while her stepson was still inside the burning building. Firefighters went in. They found a man, a 32-year-old, 5 feet 9 inches tall, and carried him out. He was responsive, conscious, breathing, and he weighed 68 pounds. That number, 68 pounds, is a number that investigators later said changed everything. That is not the weight of a man who has been ill. That is not the weight of a man who has been struggling. That is the weight of a man who has been starved. Systematically, deliberately, for a very long time. When the first responders placed him in the ambulance, he began to speak. And what he told them, captured in the body cam footage and in subsequent investigative interviews, was something that Waterbury Police Chief Fernando Spagnolo later described as the most devastating thing he had witnessed in 30 years of law enforcement. The room on Blake Street. The man, who has since chosen to identify himself publicly only as S, having chosen a new name as part of reclaiming his life, had been locked inside a small room in the house for approximately 20 years. The room measured 8 feet by 9 feet. The door was secured from the outside by a slide lock and latch that his stepmother controlled. He was allowed out of the room briefly to do household chores. He was given approximately 2 sandwiches per day. He was not permitted to access food in the kitchen. He drank from the toilet when he was thirsty, and there was nothing else available. After his father died in 2024, he said the conditions became even more restrictive. He did not know if anyone would ever come. He did not know how to make the outside world come to him. He had been inside that house since his early teens, pulled from school by his stepmother at approximately age 11, the last time anyone in an official capacity had seen him. A welfare check had been conducted when he was around 11 years old, when school records showed he had stopped attending. He had been instructed by his stepmother to tell investigators everything was fine. He told them everything was fine. After that, the outside world stopped looking. Waterbury police released bodycam footage and more than 100 crime scene photographs of the interior of the house on Blake Street. The images show mold covering the walls, broken floorboards, ceilings with exposed, damaged beams, rooms filled with years of accumulated garbage. The small bedroom where the man had been confined was charred from the fire. The fire, he said himself. He had taken hand sanitizer. He had taken sheets of printer paper. He had created a small fire inside his locked room. It was, as investigators described it, the only plan he had, the only way he knew to make someone from the outside finally open that door. It worked. The arrest and the reckoning. Kimberly Sullivan was arrested on March 12, 2025. She was charged with first-degree assault, second-degree kidnapping, first-degree unlawful restraint, cruelty to persons, and first-degree reckless endangerment. She pleaded not guilty. Her defense attorney insisted that her stepson had not been locked in the room, that food was available, that the situation was not what investigators had described. "Where do you think those specifics are coming from?" he told reporters, suggesting the details would all come out at trial. Sullivan was released on a $300,000 bond. The prosecution described the conditions as comparable to those of a World War II concentration camp. The Waterbury Police Department, shaken by what their investigators had documented, took up a collection among themselves. They bought the man clothing, books, and other items, things most people take completely for granted, things he had not had access to for 2 decades. A GoFundMe page was established for him. His conservator and attorney began working through the legal and financial processes that would help him begin rebuilding a life from the ground up at 32 years old. In April 2025, the man released his first public statement. It read, in part, "Please call me S. This is not the name given to me by my parents when I was born. I am choosing a new name for myself, and I will use that name as I reclaim control over my life and my future." He said one of the things he had enjoyed most with his newfound freedom was celebrating his 32nd birthday. He had never celebrated it before. A welfare check had found nothing suspicious when he was 11. A system that was supposed to catch exactly this kind of situation had missed it entirely. And a small fire set with hand sanitizer and printer paper is what finally made the outside world come through the door. Police Chief Spagnuolo stood in front of cameras after the arrest was announced and said, 30 years in law enforcement. This is the worst treatment of humanity I have ever witnessed. Here is a question I want to start the comments with. A welfare check was conducted when S was 11 years old and found nothing. The bodycam footage from February 2025 captured a 32-year-old man who had been living in an 8-by-9-foot room for 20 years and weighed 68 pounds. What do you think needs to fundamentally change in how welfare checks and mandatory school attendance follow-ups are conducted? What was the system supposed to catch? And how did it fail so completely here? Tell me below. Story 2. The girl with a deactivated pit on the Turpin family case Perry's, California, January 14, 2018. In the early hours of January 14, 2018, a 17-year-old girl climbed out of a window. She had never been outside alone. She had, in her entire life, been outside only a handful of times. She did not know the names of most of the streets in the neighborhood she had lived in for years. She had a phone in her hand, one her parents didn't know she had, but it had no active service. She had been saving it for this moment without even being certain it would work when the moment came. She knew that if her parents caught her before she could get help, she would die. I was always terrified that if I called the cops or tried to escape, I would get caught. Jordan Turpin later told ABC News. And then I knew I would die if I got caught. But at the end, when I saw all my younger siblings, I knew that's what I had to do. If something happened to me, at least I'd die trying. She dialed 911. It worked. The 911 recording captures a teenager with shaking hands and a voice that was barely holding together, telling an operator that she and her siblings were being abused by their parents, that the smell inside the house was sometimes so overwhelming she could barely breathe, and that 2 of her sisters and 1 of her brothers were currently chained to their beds. Deputies from the Riverside County Sheriff Department arrived at the address on Muir Woods Road in Perry's, California within minutes. What their bodycam footage captured when they walked through that front door is one of the most documented and studied examples of what extreme, long-term domestic captivity actually looks like from the outside. What the camera found inside. David and Louise Turpin had 13 children, ranging in age from 2 to 29 years old. All of them were inside that house. 12 of the 13 were severely malnourished. The oldest, a 29-year-old woman named Jennifer, weighed 82 pounds. An 11-year-old child's arm circumference measured equivalent to that of a 4.5-month-old baby. The 12-year-old appeared, to investigating officers, to be roughly the size of a 6 or 7-year-old child. Several children had been, or were currently, chained to their beds. When the deputies knocked on the door, David and Louise Turpin had quickly unchained 2 children and hidden the chains. Those children still had bruising on their wrists. The bodycam footage shows deputies moving carefully through a house cluttered with garbage and filth. They are speaking quietly, professionally, working through what they are seeing. But the footage also captures something that no training protocol can fully prepare a person for: the moment when an officer realizes that what they are standing in the middle of is not a scene from a case file or a training scenario. It is happening, right now, to real people who have been in it for years. Jordan Turpin was still in the deputy's patrol car outside when her father was walked out of the house in handcuffs. The body cam captures the moment. The deputy's vehicle, the lights, Jordan visible through the window, turning away before she could see her father's face fully. "I started freaking out," Jordan said. "I didn't know what was going to happen at all." The children who didn't know the world. One of the details that investigating officers later described as among the most difficult to process was not the physical condition of the children. It was what they didn't know. Jordan Turpin, at 17, was unfamiliar with the word medication. Some of the younger children were uncertain what police were. The family had not been permitted to play or to own toys. They were allowed to eat once a day, primarily peanut butter sandwiches, bologna, a frozen burrito, or chips, while their parent ate fast food in front of them. They were permitted to bathe once a year. They were not permitted to speak to each other when David and Louise were present, and yet, somehow, Jordan had maintained enough of herself, enough of her own mind and her own instinct for survival, to plan an escape over 2 years, to find and secretly keep a deactivated phone, and to time her attempt for the night she overheard her parents discussing a move to Oklahoma that would have made everything harder. She climbed out the window because she knew that once they moved, whatever chance remained would be gone. All 13 children were taken to the hospital. They were given food, clean clothes, and rooms. The first thing Jordan said she ate was macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets. David and Louise Turpin were arrested within hours of the bodycam footage being recorded. They later pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including torture, false imprisonment, and child abuse. In 2019, they were each sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. What came after the rescue? The immediate bodycam rescue is a part of this story that most people know. A teenager climbed out a window, called 911, and her family was saved. What is less widely known is what happened in the years after the cameras went away. Several of the Turpin children, placed in foster care following the rescue, were subsequently abused by their foster family. 3 members of that family, Marcelino Olguin, his wife, and his daughter, were charged with child abuse. They pleaded guilty. Marcelino received 7 years in prison. Multiple Turpin siblings reported that they did not have adequate access to the funds donated to them, which had been placed in a trust controlled by a court-appointed public guardian. They reported being homeless or near homeless in the years after their rescue. One sibling said he had been denied the purchase of a bicycle from the trust. Jordan Turpin, once released from foster care, was let go without stable housing arrangements, life skills training, or a clear path to independence. The bodycam footage from January 14th, 2018, captures a moment of rescue with extraordinary clarity. What it cannot capture is what happened to those children in the years that followed. The slow, complicated, frequently painful process of rebuilding a life from almost nothing, with systems that, having failed them before, failed them in new ways after. The lead investigator on the case, Wade Walsvik, said in 2021 that the case represented a culmination of everything I've done for almost 25 years. He meant that in the sense of the worst he had seen. The deepest violation of the fundamental responsibility that adults carry for the children in their care. The children who were rescued in that house are adults now. Jordan and Jennifer Turpin have spoken publicly. Others have chosen privacy. Several are still fighting for the stability and support they were promised and did not receive. Here is the question I want you to sit with. The Turpin children were failed by their parents, then placed in a foster family that also abused them, then largely failed by the county system that controlled their resources and their futures. At what point does a failure of these institutions become its own kind of story? And what accountability exists for systems that rescue children and then abandon them to another version of the same failure? Tell me what you think below. Story 3. Life is Beautiful. Brother, the NYPD Bridge Rescue, New York City, October 5th, 2023. Not everything captured on Bodycam is a discovery of horror. Some of what the camera sees is something else entirely. Something that sits at the other end of the spectrum from everything we have discussed so far. Something that, when it is over, sends a trained officer to the side of a police cruiser to put his face in his hands. On October 5th, 2023, officers Carl Fayette and Elliot Duramatter of the NYPD's 26th Precinct received a call for a man in crisis on an overpass in New York City. They arrived to find a man standing on the edge of the bridge, not fully over the railing, but close enough, leaning over the edge in a way that made clear what he was thinking about doing. Fayette and Matt approached carefully. They did not rush. They understood, as officers with this kind of training understand, that the worst thing you can do in a situation like this is make the person feel cornered, or chased, or like something is about to happen to them that they cannot control. The goal is to talk, to make a connection, to become a human being rather than a uniform. And so they talked. For 40 minutes, they talked. The bodycam footage from that night captures an extraordinary, intimate, 40-minute portrait of two police officers trying to save the life of a man they had never met. It is not dramatic in the cinematic sense. There are no sudden movements, no heroic grabs, no soundtrack. It is two people standing near the edge of a bridge in New York City, talking to someone who is not sure he wants to stay. The conversation on the ledge. The footage shows Officer Matter speaking with a quiet, steady urgency. "We're here for you," he can be heard saying. "Everybody's here for you. We're gonna help you." Officer Fayette's approach is different, warmer, more personal, leaning in with the full weight of his own humanity. "Life is beautiful. Brother," he says to the man. He repeats it, not as a script, as a genuine, direct, personal appeal from one person to another. "You are beautiful. Brother, please don't give up on me." He says it with a care that is unmistakable even through the limited audio quality of a bodycam recording. He means it. The man on the ledge is in crisis. He is not responding immediately. The minutes accumulate. 40 minutes is a very long time to stand near the edge of a bridge, trying to find the words that will make someone choose to step back. Emergency service unit officers with safety harnesses have been positioned nearby, ready to intervene physically if the moment came. But the goal, the thing Fayette and Matter were buying time for with every word, was to not need them. At the 40-minute mark, the ESU officers moved in. They grabbed the man. They brought him back over the railing. He was safe. The moment after, what the bodycam captures in the seconds after the rescue is something that the NYPD, when they shared the footage on social media, described simply as amazing work. But the footage itself is more complicated and more human than a department commendation can fully capture. Officer Carl Fayette, the moment the man is secured, does not stand up straight and check his radio. He does not exchange a professional nod with his partner. He reels backward, physically, like someone who has been carrying something very heavy for 40 minutes and has finally been allowed to set it down. He moves toward the side of the police cruiser. He crouches down. He puts his face in his hands. And he breaks down in tears. The onlookers who had gathered on the street below the bridge, ordinary New Yorkers who had stood there watching this unfold for 40 minutes, saw Fayette break down and began to cheer, not for themselves, for him, for what they had just watched him do and what it had clearly cost him. The NYPD's 26th Precinct posted the footage with a statement that read, "Police officers frequently interact with people having the worst day of their lives." That is one way to say it. Another way to say it is this. Carl Fayette stood on a bridge in New York City for 40 minutes and put everything he had into keeping a stranger alive. And when that stranger was finally safe, what was left in Fayette was not triumph or relief in any simple sense. It was something rawer and harder to name the full emotional weight of 40 minutes of genuinely caring whether this person lived or died, crashing down all at once. Both officers were commended by their precinct commander. The man they rescued was taken to a hospital for treatment. Officer Fayette's bodycam had been running the entire time. It captured all of it, the 40 minutes, the rescue, and the moment by the cruiser. It is one of the most watched and shared pieces of law enforcement footage in recent memory. Not because of violence or danger in the traditional sense, because of what it shows about what officers are actually called to do, and what it actually costs them to do it. The human being beneath the badge. This moment is worth spending some time on, not just as a compelling piece of footage, but as a piece of evidence about something that does not often get discussed directly. The conversation about policing in America over the past several years has been necessary, complicated, and unresolved. There are genuine questions of accountability, of training, of systemic practice that need to be asked and answered honestly. Nothing about Officer Fayette's tears on that bridge makes those questions go away. But what that bodycam footage also documents, with the same unfiltered clarity it always brings, is a simple fact that the officers in these cases are human beings. Not abstractions, not uniforms. Human beings who respond to calls involving a man on a ledge and spend 40 minutes trying to make him want to stay alive, and who carry the weight of that effort in a very visible, very human way. The bodycam does not choose sides. It records what happens. And what happened on that bridge on October 5th, 2023, is that two officers chose to spend 40 minutes talking to a stranger about why life is worth living, and succeeded, and then one of them couldn't hold it together afterward. That is also the job. It doesn't get as many headlines as the other moments, but it is a job, and it is captured just as clearly on the same camera. Here is what I want to ask you, and I really want to hear your answer. We talk a lot about what is expected of law enforcement officers, the training, the authority, the accountability. But how often do we talk about what this job actually costs the individuals who do it? After watching an officer literally sob with relief after saving a stranger's life, does that change anything about how you think about the mental health needs of law enforcement? Tell me below. Story 4, Second from Fire, and the camera that caught everything. On the evening of February 8, 2026, in Jacksonville, Florida, a woman was forcibly removed from her vehicle by a man who then drove away with her 1-year-old daughter still in the back seat. It was, by any measure, every parent's worst nightmare compressed into a single moment. Her child was gone. The car was gone. She was standing in the road. Deputies from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office located the stolen vehicle within minutes and attempted to initiate a traffic stop. The suspect, later identified as 34-year-old Richard Younger, refused to pull over. A pursuit ensued through the streets of Jacksonville, covering several blocks at speed before Younger crashed the stolen vehicle into another car. The impact was severe. The other vehicle, the one that had been struck, immediately caught fire. A 14-year-old who had been in that car managed to escape before law enforcement arrived. But an adult woman remained inside, trapped, as a fire began to spread through the vehicle. Deputy Almin Rezidovich reached the burning car. His bodycam was running. "Oh, there's a person, bro." The footage from Deputy Rezidovich's bodycam in the seconds after he reaches a car is a kind of material that news editors review and partially shield because of its intensity. But the description of what it shows is straightforward and documented in multiple official and media accounts. Rezidovich approaches a car. He asks another deputy for a tool to break the window. He gets the car door open, and what greets him is a woman inside the vehicle whose hair is on fire. "Oh, there's a person, bro." He is heard saying in the footage, the exclamation of someone whose entire body is processing danger faster than language can keep up with. Without pausing, he pulls a woman from the vehicle. He drags her to safety. He works to extinguish the flames on her. He kneels beside her, repeatedly asking if there is anyone else in the car while other deputies handle the suspect and the child. The car erupts in flames seconds after the woman is clear of it. Seconds, not minutes. Seconds. The 1-year-old child was recovered unharmed from the suspect's vehicle by another deputy. Richard Younger was arrested at the scene and charged with multiple felonies, including kidnapping and carjacking. The woman Rezidovich pulled from the car was taken to a hospital and is recovering. Deputy Rezidovich told a fellow officer afterward, "I got to her just in time." The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office released a statement. We are incredibly proud of Officer Residovich's courage and the swift, coordinated response of all the officers involved. His bodycam caught all of it. Every second from approach to rescue to the wall of fire that erupted in the space where the woman had been sitting moments before. What bodycams have changed? We have spent the last 90 minutes in this episode inside 4 cases where a body-worn camera was recording when something extraordinary happened. Each of those cases is different in its scale, its context, its outcome, the emotions it generates. But they are connected by one thing. The camera told the truth about what was there. That is, in some ways, such an obvious statement that it barely seems worth making. Of course the camera told the truth. Cameras record what they see. But in the context of law enforcement, in the context of interactions between police and the public that, for most of American history, had no documentation beyond what each side remembered or chose to report, that obvious statement represents an enormous shift. The bodycam that captured Deputy Residovich pulling a woman from a burning car seconds before it exploded is the same technology that, in Baltimore in 2017, captured an officer placing a soup can in a pile of trash before walking away, and then activating his camera, and then returning to discover the same soup can for the arrest record. The charges in that case were dropped. The case is still referenced in discussions of police accountability and the limits of what bodycam technology can prevent versus what it can simply document. The bodycam footage from the Waterbury House fire tells the story of a 32-year-old man who weighed 68 pounds after 20 years in a locked room. The same technology, in the same period, has also captured officers violating the rights of people in their custody in ways that, without the footage, would never have been provable. The camera does not make policing good or bad. It records what policing looks like. It does that for the moment when an officer talks a stranger off a bridge ledge for 40 minutes and then breaks down by a cruiser. It does it for the moments when officers run toward fire. And it does it for the moments when what officers do in the field does not match what they write in their reports. The truth of bodycam footage is not selective. It is comprehensive. And that comprehensiveness is the entire point. The fugitive stopped for a broken taillight. Here is one more story that belongs in this episode not because it involves a dramatic rescue or an act of extraordinary physical courage, but because it captures something different about what a bodycam can reveal when a routine moment turns into something nobody expected. In 2022, deputies in Oconee County, Georgia, stopped a man for driving on a suspended license. A routine stop. A suspended license. The kind of thing that happens hundreds of times a day in traffic enforcement across the country. The man gave his name as Ray Seckham. He was cooperative. The stop proceeded normally. He was taken to jail and fingerprinted, as a standard procedure, and then the fingerprints came back. His real name was Mohammed Bilal El Amin. In 1994, 28 years earlier, El Amin had shot and killed an 18-year-old. He had fled. He had been living under an assumed identity for nearly 3 decades. Law enforcement had been looking for him since the year Bill Clinton was elected for the second time. He had evaded detection for 28 years. And a broken traffic violation in Georgia brought the whole thing down. The bodycam footage of that traffic stop, unremarkable in its execution, utterly standard in its procedure, contains a moment that ended a 28-year fugitive case. The deputies had no idea what they had until the fingerprints came back. El Amin was charged with a 1994 homicide, an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. The bodycam was there for all of it before and after the moment when a routine stop became the end of 28 years on the run. What the camera cannot change. Before we close, there is something worth saying plainly about all of the cases in this episode. The bodycam footage from Waterbury, Connecticut did not prevent 20 years of captivity. It recorded the rescue. The captivity happened, all of it in a world where no camera was running, where no system was checking, where a child stopped going to school and nobody looked closely enough, long enough, to find him. The bodycam footage from the Turpin house did not prevent the abuse. It documented the day it ended, and it could not protect those children from what happened to them after the foster family, the inadequate support system, the years of continued hardship that followed a rescue that should have been the beginning of something better. The bodycam footage of Officer Fayette breaking down by a police cruiser is one of the most watched pieces of law enforcement footage of recent years. But it does not tell us anything about how many times, in how many cases across the country, the person on the ledge is reached too late, or not at all. About how many people in mental health crisis encounter a response that is not Fayette and Muta's 40 minutes of genuine human connection, but something less patient, less skilled, less equipped. The Bodycam records a moment. It does not determine what the moment is. What determines a moment is everything that came before it: the training, the policy, the resources, the leadership, the values of the individual wearing the camera, and the department they serve. The Bodycam holds a record. Everything else builds it. The things nobody expects to see. What connects these 4 cases: a man weighing 68 pounds carried out of a burning room, the 13 children discovered by deputies who walked through a house of filth and chains, the officer sobbing with relief beside his cruiser, the deputy pulling a woman from fire seconds before it consumed everything is not violence. Exactly. It is something more fundamental than that. It is a full, unedited, unmanaged reality of human beings in the worst and most extraordinary circumstances of their lives, witnessed by other human beings who showed up, because that is what showing up means. The Bodycam is a device, but what it captures is not devices. It captures moment-specific, real, irreversible moments that are attached to specific human beings with names and histories and futures that continue long after the footage ends. S celebrated his 32nd birthday for the first time in 2025. He chose a new name for himself. Jordan Turpin has spoken publicly about learning to live in a world she was never taught how to navigate. She and her sister Jennifer are building lives from scratch with everything that entails. The man who stood on the bridge in New York City is alive. He received treatment. Whatever came before that night and whatever came after, on October 5th, 2023, he stepped back from the edge. The woman whose hair was on fire in a burning car in Jacksonville, Florida, is recovering. Her daughter was found unharmed. None of these outcomes were inevitable. Every single one of them required a person, a first responder, a bystander, a teenager with a deactivated phone, and shaking hands to make a decision in real time that changed what happened next. The camera was rolling for all of it. Closing. The final question I want to leave with you, and I want the full comment section on this one, because there's no single right answer. Given everything the Bodycam captures: rescues and revelations, courage and failure, the best of what first responders do and the worst, do you believe the public has a right to see all of this footage? Not just the highlights, not just the moments that are selected to be shared, but all of it as a matter of accountability and public record? And if you believe in that kind of transparency, how do you reconcile it with the privacy of the people the camera captures at the worst moments of their lives? The 68-pound man in the back of an ambulance, the 17-year-old girl in a deputy's car, the man on the bridge. There is no clean answer. There never is. But there's a real question about accountability and privacy, about truth and dignity, that the existence of Bodycam technology forces us to sit with, whether we are ready to or not. Tell me where you land. Share this with someone. And remember that somewhere right now, a camera is recording something that the rest of us will only understand later, if we are paying close enough attention to look. I will see you in the next one.